Okay, so this is an introduction to the quadratic formula. For example, if we wanted to solve this quadratic equation here, so far what we've talked about is solving by factorizing, but in this example, it would be impossible for us to factorize this. There's no way that we can break this down into brackets. There are no two numbers that multiply to give us a 1 that add up to a 4. So we are going to discuss basically a different way that we can solve this equation. And it's by using something that's called the quadratic formula. So basically you need to have your equation written in this format, ax squared plus bx plus c. Basically that means that everything needs to be set equal to 0, or I guess y in whatever case. And then the formula looks like this. We're solving for x, and it's quite a complex formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. So the first time you see that, you might think, wow, that is quite a complicated equation. There are plenty of songs that you can learn to memorize that. I'll go ahead and post a song that I know will get stuck in your head very easily, so you will never forget it, but there's the equation. And basically, if you just plug everything in, A, B, and C to this equation, you will find your answer or answers, multiple. You could have 0, 1, or 2 answers, remember, for x. So let's begin using this example. If I have x squared plus 4x plus 1, a would be the coefficient, or the number that's in front of x squared. So in this situation, a equals 1. B is 4 here. And c equals 1. So we'll replace everything into our formula, and then I'll show you how to calculate it. So I have x equals, it's a negative b, so that means I need to change the sign of b. If I have a positive 4, that becomes a negative 4. And then that plus or minus, I'll show you how that works in just a minute. The square root of b squared, so that's 4 squared, minus 4 times a times c. So I'm going to show all of that in brackets. 4 times 1 times c, which is also 1. And then that will all be divided by 2 times a, so 2 times 1. All right. When you're solving these quadratic equations, you always want to start with what is underneath the square root, or just the square root in general. So I'm going to bring that to the side. So I have square root of 4 squared is 16, and then minus all of these things multiplied together. So minus 4 times 1 times 1 is just 4. And so that would give me the square root of 12. All right, so I'm going to rewrite all of this. I have minus 4 plus or minus the square root. This all underneath the radical, or underneath the square root, became just 12. And then we're dividing all of that by 2. So now, it looks a little bit nicer now, but we still have this. Remember surds, and remember simplifying surds. We always want to get that as simple as possible. So let's see, if we have the square root of 12, we would bring that out to be the square root of 4 times 3, and simplifying the square root of 4 would be 2 root 3. So let me rewrite this whole thing again as minus 4 plus or minus square root of 12 changes to 2 root 3 divided by 2. So we could leave our answer this way, but also we could split this apart. So you could have minus 4 over 2 plus or minus 2 root 3 over 2. See how I split this up? Basically, this is divided by 2, and the other section is divided by 2. That all over bit, so this line, this division, means that everything on the top, every piece on the top is divided by 2. Everything is divided by 2. So minus 4 is divided by 2, and 2 root 3 is divided by 2. And then seeing from there, you can simplify this. Minus 4 divided by 2 is negative 2, and then bring down that plus or minus. The 2's here, 2 divided by 2 is 1, so we're left with just the square root of 3. So what this means is that we have two different answers. That plus or minus means that we have two answers that look different. It's really -2 plus the square root of 3 and -2 minus the square root of 3. Remember, in a parabola, I'm not sure exactly what this one will look like. Let's just kind of draw a quick sketch. You could have two solutions. So these are examples of two of the values of x where our graph would cross the x-axis and touch the x-axis there. So you have two different answers. If you are asked to leave your answer, sometimes it'll say write your answer in the format a plus or minus the square root of b, something like that, then this would be acceptable as your answer. But if it says give your answer to, I don't know, 3 significant figures, then you would bring out your calculator and just type it in. So you could say, you could probably have done that at this stage as well, but since we're simplified here, I'll just say -2 plus square root of 3, oops, that's not what I wanted, -2, I cannot type today, -2 plus square root of 3 is that, so -0.268, and let's see, -2 minus square root of 3 is -3.73. So those would be your two answers. All right, so it just depends on how you're asked to give them. This is acceptable or this is acceptable, depending on what they provide or what they tell you to answer with. Typically, I would just leave it as such, because who has time for calculators? Not me. I'm sorry, that was off screen. Anyway, there are a lot of different types of answers that you might come up with. You might come up with just one answer. You might come up with no solution. That would be if something under the square root is negative, or typically your answer will look something like this. When you cannot factorize, that means that your answer is going to be quite complicated. So this is a typical kind of answer. All right, I'll kind of post some more things that are a little bit more detailed and going into some more difficult questions, but that's a basic introduction.